I have been wanting to talk about this series for so damn long. In 2013, hot off the heels of Marvel's The Avengers, the hit film that you might have heard of, Marvel and ABC were like, hey, let's make a TV show. And so they made a TV show. Crazy story, right?
Don't touch Lola.
Now, Joss Whedon, director of the first Avengers movie, who, is kind of canceled now, he co-created it along with his little brother Jed and Marissa Tancherone, who was his brother's wife. Try to keep up. Now, Joss was pretty heavily involved in the early seasons of this show, especially because he was making the Avengers movies at the time, right? He had done the first one, he was going to do the second one, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was kind of running parallel with this. So he was kind of working on the show there for a bit, and in later seasons he ended up taking a back seat and kind of just passing the reins on to them. And with that, we have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, we have the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because there's no way on earth I'm reviewing the entire show in one video for two reasons. One, because that would be an absurdly long video. And two, I have not seen season 6 and 7 of this show, which is really funny considering I watched the first 4 seasons live. The 5th season I was a couple weeks behind and I just kind of stopped watching it, I guess. Now, before I actually get into reviewing it, I want to tell the story of how I learned about the show because it's a great story. Back in 2013, my family got to the theater super early to see a little film called Iron Man 3. And we were sitting there, it was the first look. This is how early we were. We got there before trailers started. And it was also before first look was, just a bunch of commercials, and it was actually, a first look at things. And I had seen like a featurette of something, and I saw the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo on like the background, and they had Ming-Na Wen giving an interview, and I was sitting there, I was like, what the hell is this? And at the very end of it, it said, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming this fall. And I was like, what? And then I ended up watching the show. It was pretty fun. The plot of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is about as simple as a plot can be. You have a little team of characters. They're going on missions, solving problems, kicking ass. There's some mystery involved. But there is so much more to the show than that. Team grows throughout the seasons into being some fantastic characters, but they start out in this first season sort of as character archetypes as opposed to full-fledged characters, and they get to that point later, which is what's great. But if you look in these first 2 episodes, here's what you have. You have Agent Melinda May, the silent badass with a mysterious past. Then you have Grant Ward, James Bond-esque Boy Scout who can clear out an entire field of people in a couple seconds. He's good with every gun. The ladies love him. Then you have Skye. She's the hacker. She's the young one. She's the outsider of the group coming in. Then you have Fitz and Simmons, the nerdy scientists that kind of annoy people, but they all secretly love them. And who leads the team? Philip J. Coulson, played by Clark Gregg, who is mysteriously back from the dead somehow, because yes, this show takes place after the Avengers when Coulson was stabbed through the chest. Now, I think originally Coulson wasn't going to be in the show, but they realized they needed a character that people liked to be the face of the show, and they're like, well, let's just bring Coulson back and make a story about how he lived. Great plot line, by the way. And I like every single member of this group. Now, I would say Skye's my least favorite. I still like the character, and I like the arc she goes on into becoming Daisy and Quake, but there's some things with that character that kind of bother me, some of the things they do with her. I'll talk more about that, mainly when we get to season 4. But I do like the entire team. Grant Ward was always my favorite member. That was before episode 17, so I was kind of heartbroken when things happened. He was still my favorite character after that, though. Melinda May was always my mom's favorite. I mean, it makes sense. It's Melinda May. She was never a big fan of Ward, and that's something I've given her crap about since 2013, because I love that character. But Fitzsimmons, those two, who, by the way, they come with their own ship name. It's perfect. they are probably like the objective best characters on the show. I also think Ian DeCastiger gives the best performance of any cast member. In season 4, he gets some competition when Mallory Jansen comes on, but I always remembered him being... He always had the strongest performance of the team, I felt. And him and Elizabeth Henstridge have such great chemistry that it's insane to think about the fact they had not met before doing their test screening for this show. All the characters are great, but this first season does have some issues. It's a lot of people's least favorite season. It's not my least favorite season. You'll figure out my least favorite season is. But this season has a bit of a pacing issue. Now, it never really bothered me, but I do have to dock it because it is kind of an issue. So here's what happened. They were planning the first season independently of what Kevin Feige was doing with the MCU. Now, granted, the two divisions would talk so that there were no continuity issues, because this show was originally intended to be part of the MCU, even though some things have kind of segued. I've kind of always had it in my mind that it is the MCU. So, they would talk to make sure there was no continuity. And so while they were planning it, Marvel comes into the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. offices and they're like, at the end of Captain America the Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. gets destroyed and Hydra is inside S.H.I.E.L.D. And they're like, oh. Now the season started in September of 2013. Winter Soldier did not come out until April of 2014. And the main arc of this first season is building up to the Hydra reveal. Now, the issue with that is that it means you're going 7 months before you can have your big Hydra reveal plot twist. So you have to think of what all you can fit in there to build up to it, but not make it obvious. And with that, we get some filler episodes. And it really doesn't feel like there's a big storyline happening until around episode 10 episode 10-ish, I would say, because that was the mid-season finale. But I would be lying if I said that some of my favorite episodes from the first season weren't in the front half of the season. The first 9 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are pretty self-contained. They have hints of a broader story, but you could start on any one of these episodes and not need any greater context, really. You can think of them more as anthology episodes. It's the same group of characters, but they're going on a different adventure, and it's not until like halfway through the season that they reveal how all of this stuff ties together. So you could start with episode 7, and then go into episode 2, and then to episode 4. That's just kind of the nature of the first half of this season. And each of these first few episodes is designed to focus on a key member or members of the group to really establish them. The first episode brings the team together, so it focuses on all of them, but it does a really good job of establishing why Phil Coulson's not just a great leader, but a great hero. Episode 2's more of that. The first couple episodes are pretty much just the Phil Coulson show. Episode 3 is where things start to get more individual. It focuses very heavily on the relationship between Skye and Ward and building up those two, which becomes a key component for the next 3 seasons of television. Episode 4 is much more plot-driven than character-driven, but Coulson has the emotional connection in that, so I like to think of that sort of as the Coulson episode. They also do establish Ward a bit more. They like to work to establish Ward for very good reason. Episode 5 highlights Skye. Episode 6 focuses on Fitz and Simmons, but more so Simmons, and it's also one of my favorite episodes of the season. It has a sense of horror and mystery, and there's so much emotion packed into that episode throughout. Even though I've seen it God knows how many times at this point, every time I watch episode 6, I'm like, God damn this show. By the way, the scene in the firehouse in episode 6, fantastic. I love it. Episode 7 is the hub, where they really introduce the hub, and some important S.H.I.E.L.D. characters both in the shows and the movies, like Victoria Hand and Jasper Sitwell, and they break the characters into groups so they can flesh out Skye and Simmons' relationship, and they can flesh out Ward and Fitz, one of my favorite pairings on the show, as well as just show why Phil Coulson's such a badass. Episode 8 focuses on Ward's past trauma, and Episode 9, which I love because it balances horror and comedy so well, focuses on May's trauma. Oh yeah, that's something else worth mentioning. This show deals with trauma like it's going out of style. Not just season 1, like pretty much all of them. In season 2, Fitz has a crazy thing going on. In season 3, Simmons has a lot of stuff going on. Season 4 takes that even farther, and pretty much every character's miserable. And it's not until episode 10, as I mentioned, that the plots of these first 9 episodes really start to connect in a really nice way. It kind of caps off that first bit of the season, and it lets you know how the rest of the season's gonna go. And as said by everyone else online, the last half of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1 is where things start to get real. I mean, we learn about Coulson's past, which is gnarly. Basically, they took Kree DNA, put it into him. He had a series of surgeries. So they take some Kree DNA, put it in him, and the fact is, Hart was like, that. It just kind of does that again, and he heals. And then Coulson was like, this isn't really that great of a thing. And they're like, well, we need to cover this up. And so Fury ordered them to operate on his mind and implant false memories so that he wouldn't know what he went through. 2 of my favorite characters also get introduced in the back half. Antoine Triplet, played by B.J. Britt, and John Garrett, played by the late, great Bill Paxton, who's also the big bad of Season 1. This season has some great villains, but looking back, the villains aren't that great, but I love them so much. And they have a crew. I like when villains have a crew, and it's not just a couple of them. They have a whole team operating. That's something like most of the villains have in this show, is they're always working as part of a team. So we've got Garrett, who leads them. Ward is his number 2. Ian Quinn is a whiny little bitch, and he would be a lot more annoying if John Garrett didn't point that out every scene he's in with him. And then there's Raina. Raina is like top 5 best characters on this show. And she just gets better in season 2 when she really has a stake in the story. And the cool thing is the bad guys have the most badass character. See, this show couldn't exactly afford to have the Avengers. They have the Avengers number 2s, they have Maria Hill, Lady Sif shows up, Peggy Carter shows up in season 2, so they could afford to have their side characters, but they couldn't afford to actually get the Avengers. So instead they just wrap all the Avengers into one, and voila, Deathlock is born. Deathlock is the best. Also, they make a Winter Soldier reference with Deathlock in episode 19, which would be 2 weeks after the Winter Soldier came out, so I don't even know if it was intentional or not. It's just watch it. The character of Mike Peterson, who becomes Deathlock, is pretty much the through line of this season. He's a very important piece of it. He starts out, he's the antagonist at episode 1, pretty much for forces beyond his control. And then in episode 10, he joins S.H.I.E.L.D. Team 616, which whoever's idea it was to name the main S.H.I.E.L.D. Team 616, shout out to you. Then he gets blown up. He gets a cyborg eye. He effectively gets mind controlled. They put metal in his skeleton so he gets shot in the head at one point and just walks it off. He has a cybernetic leg, a robot arm with some rocket launchers. He has body armor and a trench coat. And then in the end he gets redeemed in a very heartfelt way that pays off the entire season. Take note, Disney Plus. This is how you do a season finale. And then he cameos a couple times in later seasons. I think he shows up in season 2. It's season 5. I don't think he's in 3 or 4. Well, his skeleton's in season 4. Now, the last few episodes of this season, I would say from like episode 16 on, is where this show goes from entertaining to incredible. Most people say that the show gets great after the Hydra reveal in episode 17. I respectfully disagree. In my mind, the show gets great one episode before that, in episode 16, when they know they're one episode away from the Hydra reveal, so they really start to set it up, and everyone on the team is suspicious of each other. They have to arrest Ward, they have to stun May, they even blame Coulson for something at one point, Fitz gets blamed for something. It's so intense. And 9 years later, I'm still on the edge of my seat watching episode 16. But the Hydra reveal is hands down my favorite episode of the season. It's a lot of people's favorite episode of the season. It's one of the most memorable episodes of the show. It's when it's revealed Hydra's working within S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ward, the guy that we've believed to be the ultimate good guy this entire show, is John Garrett's number 2 guy at Hydra. And that's when Ward goes from the best character to the really best character. There is an episode towards the end of the season that I really love. It's after the Hydra reveal. It's after everything has gone wrong. The team is all split up. Skye's captured. And it's devoted to Coulson's girlfriend. Now, if you have not watched the show in some time or haven't watched it at all and decided to watch a spoiler review of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, then I can assure you that episode is so much cooler than it sounds. Give it a watch or a rewatch. It's such a beautiful story that they put in that episode. And this show also has the single greatest surprise reveal I've ever seen. It tops any cameo in a Marvel movie. Step aside Charlie Cox in No Way Home. Step aside Toby and Andrew in No Way Home. And step aside John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is the best reveal. And while this show is not as remembered as most of the Marvel shows for some reason, considering it's the longest running one, it ran from 2013 to 2020. It literally bookended Marvel television. It was the first show to start and the last show to end before Disney Plus came in. It's a shame it's not as remembered because this show has so much great stuff. And this season also, it's a slept-on season, but it has so much great stuff. There are 2 moments from this season I will never forget. The first of which is in episode 17, shortly before the Hydra reveal when Ward's still masquerading as a good guy, and he has this scene in the closet with Skye.
Maybe I deserve to. I killed an innocent man, Skye.
And it's basically him confessing, talking about how he's not that great of a guy, and first you think it's just, a disguise, but like looking back on it, I think it's like legitimately a scene where Grant Ward is confessing all the bad things he's done in Hydra to Skye. It's a great moment. And the second one is a little bit in the finale with Fitz and Simmons in the bottom of the ocean. You know the scene I'm talking about. It's incredible.
You're taking it.
Why would you make me do this? You're my best friend in the world.
Yeah, you're more than that, Gemma.
A lot of people say that the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the worst season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and by all means, that doesn't mean it's a bad season. Now, while I disagree that the first season is the worst, the second season is my personal least favorite, it still has so much amazing stuff. Sure, the first half of the season has a lot of filler and setup because they need to wait 17 episodes before Captain America the Winter Soldier comes out. And with the exception of probably the Lorelei episode, which is episode 15, I really enjoy and I love most of the episodes in this season. That Lorelei episode, though, is just, it's nothing. Especially, it's funny because it comes like right at the height of the show. It comes like right after we learn Coulson and Skye's past, and right before Hydra, there's just an episode in the middle with a random woman from Asgard, and it adds nothing to the greater narrative. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1. What do you think about that season? It's probably been a long time since you've watched it, but what do you think of it? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, I would love to know who some of your favorite characters are in this season, or just the show in general. So let me know that also. Also leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCHQ. That's gonna be it. Have a great day, guys. I was gonna do a thumbnail where I had sunglasses like Phil Coulson's, but I remembered I don't actually own a pair of sunglasses at the moment.